Stop. You haven't subscribed to the channel yet. Subscribe now. We have new stories every day. Now, let's go. I work as a trucker, and when it comes to differentiating between a sailor and a trucker, it all boils down to the type of ocean we navigate. A sailor sails the watery ocean, while a trucker maneuvers through the asphalt ocean. The key distinction lies in the ocean we traverse, making it a straightforward comparison. I graduated from high school in 1980 in a Midwestern state, having grown up on a farm. Realizing that farming wasn't my lifelong ambition, I opted for a trade school where I learned the ropes of driving big trucks. The school guaranteed me a job upon completion, and with the funds I had saved up, everything seemed to fall into place. My name is Mason, and I thoroughly enjoyed my trucking job. Over the years, I saved up my extra earnings with the goal of eventually owning my own rig, as that's where the real money lies. During layovers between loads, I would often take on local driving jobs or help out on farms to supplement my income. Having traveled extensively across the continental United States and even ventured into parts of Canada and Mexico, I've covered nearly every state during my time on the road. Eventually, I managed to save up enough money to purchase my own rig, a slightly used but well-maintained vehicle. Growing up on a farm provided me with a good understanding of mechanics, so I decided to invest most of my savings and buy the rig outright. With some money left over, I customized it to my liking and gave it the name Landship, a choice that initially raised eyebrows until I explained its significance. As I continued my journeys, I built connections with fellow truckers, often exchanging information about upcoming routes and sharing insights on what to expect on the road. Driving a long-haul big rig turned out to be both adventurous and enjoyable. During one memorable experience, I found myself stranded in a sudden snowstorm that had covered a northern state while I was on my way south. Opting to wait it out, I parked at a local truck stop equipped with a fuel dump, motel, and diner. Though I typically stayed in my truck, the freezing weather prompted me to book a room. As I reclined in bed, engrossed in a mundane TV show, chaos erupted in the adjacent room. It turned out that a trucker's wife had surprised her husband, catching him with someone else. The ensuing commotion was far from pleasant, but knowing the roads would be clear by morning, I decided to endure the ruckus until a more peaceful time. I woke up around 5:30 the following morning and started my rig while enjoying breakfast at the restaurant. This ensured that the cab would be warm as I set out on the road. About halfway through my meal, the woman involved in the commotion from the previous night took a seat next to me and initiated a conversation. Although I wasn't particularly interested in engaging with her, I decided it was better than talking to myself and went with the flow. Besides, she had a certain charm about her. She introduced herself as Victoria and explained that she was trying to make her way back home to Oklahoma before winter set in. Victoria shared that the tumultuous incident the night before was a misunderstanding between the trucker and his wife. She had hitched a ride with him just 3 days earlier, and despite being in the same room, they were not sharing the same bed. The room had 2 double beds, with him in one and her in the other. They managed to convince the wife that nothing had happened by pointing out that both beds were disheveled, with no signs of wet spots. In the end, Victoria did stay in the same room as the trucker and his wife, sleeping alone. The wife seemed to buy the explanation, as the tumultuous situation calmed down just an hour after it started. Victoria went on to share that she had been hitchhiking across the country for the past few months and had a plan to make it back home in another 3 to 4 weeks. During her journey, she enjoyed catching rides from truckers, relishing the elevated view and the freedom from driving responsibilities. Curious about my destination, she inquired about my route. I informed her that I would be heading south and extended an open invitation for her to join me without any commitments. She accepted, and we set off together. Knowing that I would be taking on various loads, some less than ideal, before reaching Oklahoma, I was okay with it because I was still enjoying the scenery and exploring new places. The view from the co-pilot's seat wasn't bad either. Surprisingly, Victoria covered most of her meals, and the only expense I incurred was for the showers we rented every other day. While she was pleasant company, I anticipated that I would part ways with her in a couple of weeks. After traveling together on the road for approximately 2 weeks, everything was running smoothly. We made a pit stop to refuel the truck and grab a bite to eat, anticipating that we'd be back on the road in about an hour. She excused herself to use the restroom, encouraging me to go ahead, and that she'd join me in the truck in 10 or 15 minutes. I wandered around the store area of the fuel depot and eventually made my way back to the landship. Noticing that the curtains were drawn closed on both doors and the windshield, I didn't think much of it. Upon opening the door, she explained she was changing clothes and asked me to proceed so we could resume our journey down the road. Barely shifting into top gear, and just as I was getting back into what I humorously called driving mode, she emerged from the sleeper cab half naked. Okay. Wow. She casually took a seat in the co-pilot seat and began chatting as if nothing was out of the ordinary. This was completely uncharted territory for me, and nothing in my past experiences had prepared me for such a moment. Sure, I heard tales from fellow truckers about similar encounters, some involving wives, others girlfriends, and some with hitchhikers like her. While I already knew this girl was pretty when dressed, her current state revealed her as drop-dead gorgeous. Blonde hair, a cute nose, and even cuter belly button, and freckles from head to toe. Despite her thin lips, they still seemed to beg for a kiss. It took about 2 hours before we found a sizable area to pull over, one of those highway pullouts that many truckers and motorists use to stretch and attend to nature calls, strategically installed by most states to reduce highway accidents due to fatigue. Throughout the journey, she remained seated, casually taking in the scenery and conversing as if being nude in a large road rake was the most natural thing. Once I could finally use my tongue and mouth for something other than putting my foot into it, I ventured to ask her if this was a common occurrence during her rides with other truckers. She revealed that this was the first time she had ever engaged in such an act and admitted it was a significant turn-on for her. I had to concede that it had a similar effect on me. Who was I to argue with a very pretty, naked young woman making it exceedingly difficult to focus on my job? When we eventually stopped the rig, it was at the back of the parking area designated for big road rigs. Much like the landship, Mother Nature took her course once again, and in a matter of seconds, the curtains were drawn, leaving us both naked in the truck. We enjoyed each other's company for 2 hours, and it was the best experience I had ever had to date. Leading up to this moment, absolutely nothing, and I mean nothing, had been discussed regarding such activities between us. As we approached her destination in Oklahoma, I sensed a tinge of sadness from her. I too felt a bit on the downside, but assumed we would part ways in just under 2 days. Finally, the day arrived, and as we prepared to go our separate ways, she confided in me. She expressed a reluctance for me to leave her behind, admitting that she didn't want us to part. While I recognized there was no compelling reason to either leave her or take her along. Aside from the physical aspect, we had our final meal together before parting ways. It was then that she revealed her growing feelings, stating that she thought she was falling in love with me. She asked if I truly had to leave her there. Faced with this unexpected revelation, I was at a loss for words. I knew finding another co-pilot like her wouldn't happen anytime soon, but I also understood that I might be better off without her accompanying me on the journey ahead. I eventually shared my phone number with her, outlining the opportunity for her to join me as a co-driver if she attended a 6-month truck driver's school to obtain her commercial driver's license. As the owner of the rig, I promised to swing back and pick her up once she completed the program. She agreed to the plan and stayed in regular contact. A week later, she called to inform me that she had enrolled in a driving school and promised to provide weekly updates. Despite this, we found ourselves engaged in lengthy 2-hour conversations every other night. Our discussions spanned a wide range of topics, from the intricacies of driving and load assignments to various aspects of her schooling. She expressed a keen interest in understanding every facet of the job. Additionally, we delved into our personal relationship, which had blossomed during her time riding with me. We engaged in conversations about our feelings and shared our respective goals. During our discussions, I made it clear that if I found a woman I wanted to be with, I believed in a one-on-one commitment. If she were to become my partner, there could be no room for another guy in the picture, particularly when it came to physical closeness, especially kissing. I emphasized that intimacy with someone else would be a deal-breaker, as I considered myself a one-woman man and expected the same level of commitment from my partner. We went on to outline the behaviors that would and would not be tolerated in our relationship. I recounted how my parents, who had been solely exclusive to each other, were married when my mom was just 16 and my dad was 19. To my surprise, she expressed complete agreement with all I had conveyed. We delved into discussions about her family, and she shared that she had 2 younger brothers and 1 sister. I reciprocated by mentioning that I have 2 brothers, 1 older and 1 younger. Given that she was aware of my farm upbringing from our previous conversations, while she rode shotgun, there wasn't much more about me that needed explaining. However, she remained somewhat vague about her parents and their occupations. I speculated that she might not be particularly proud of them for some reason. I acknowledged that if we were to pursue co-driving my rig, I would eventually have to meet her parents. 5.5 months after I had dropped her off, she called me with the exciting news that she had obtained her commercial driver's license. She urged me to head in her direction, and given that I was only 7 states away, I estimated that I could be in the area in about 3 weeks, give or take a day or 2. During our conversation, I expressed my desire to meet her parents and siblings. While she didn't seem overly thrilled about the idea, she agreed to organize a gathering at her parents' house during the first weekend of my visit. Arriving 2 days earlier than expected, I dropped the trailer at a truck stop and drove directly to her house using the address she had provided. The surprise of my early arrival caught her off guard, as she lived in a small community just outside of Oklahoma City. She explained that her parents resided about 15 miles away within the city limits. Although she seemed a bit hesitant, she called her parents to confirm their willingness to meet me. With their affirmative response, plans were set for a get-together at her parents' house in 3 days. Anticipating the event, I felt a mix of excitement and a hint of apprehension. As she drove her car towards her parents' house, I couldn't help but notice that we weren't headed towards a part of town considered the wrong side of the tracks. Instead, we were entering a gated community with homes that easily reached 6 figures. When we finally pulled up in front of a small mansion, I had a moment of doubt about this meeting. I worried I was way underdressed, feeling like I was about to meet royalty. To add to the pressure, both of her parents were high-powered lawyers making substantial incomes, and they owned the business along with 3 partners. Conflicted about what to do, I questioned whether I should go in or run like a scalded dog. It felt like an awkward situation, and I desperately sought guidance. Victoria reassured me that we had arrived, encouraging me to act as natural as possible. She added a friendly reminder that no one was going to bite, so I should muster the courage to get out of the car. Surprisingly, not only were her parents wealthy, but they were also remarkably down-to-earth about their lives. They expressed genuine concern about Victoria, being their eldest, learning to drive such a large truck across the country. I took the opportunity to share the story of how Victoria and I met and detailed the events of our 4-week trip to Oklahoma. I discussed the financial aspects of owning my own rig versus working for someone else, emphasizing the camaraderie within the trucking industry. I explained that once friendships were forged in this field, truckers looked out for each other like brothers or sisters. I acknowledged the existence of a few unscrupulous individuals who tarnished the reputation of truckers, but emphasized that the majority of us were family-oriented individuals dedicated to our jobs and eager to return home to our families. The day unfolded surprisingly smoothly, and I found myself genuinely attracted to her family. It seemed that they had accepted me, which boded well as I was about to take their daughter on as a driving partner. I proposed paying her 30% of the load's earnings, a rate higher than what she would typically make working for someone else. The remaining amount would cover maintenance, fuel, food, showers, and other expenses associated with driving and owning our landship. Her dad suggested formalizing the arrangement in writing, but I insisted on doing so only if Victoria agreed. She assured them that she trusted me, emphasizing that I was the only person she had spent more than a couple of days with while touring the country. According to her, I was a genuinely upfront person. While her mom had mixed feelings about both sides of the agreement, she deferred the decision back to me. I decided to move forward, saying, "Let's do it. I have nothing to hide." Consequently, we signed a binding contract outlining the share of each load. While I might lose a bit of money up front, the long-term gains for team drivers, who weren't required to stop as often as the law mandated for single drivers, made the arrangement worthwhile. Over the following 9 months, Victoria and I traversed the roads, occasionally making side trips to her parents' house or my family's farm. The landship had accumulated over 2 million miles, and it was becoming evident that it was time for a replacement. Despite my reluctance, I agreed, acknowledging the signs of aging, both cosmetically and in terms of emerging mechanical issues. Given my meticulous record-keeping, I managed to secure a good deal on a brand-new Kenworth. Having saved a substantial amount of money due to my simplified lifestyle, I only needed to finance about 25% of the new truck's cost. It was during this time that Victoria approached me, asking for a private conversation. We sat down and talked. She proposed covering half of the cost of the truck, suggesting an equal partnership with a 50-50 split for all expenses. This would be a straightforward arrangement with no strings attached. I suggested we discuss it with her parents, considering the substantial price tag of the rig I was eyeing, which was around $200,000. She asserted that, being of legal age, her parents' opinion didn't matter in this decision. Left with little choice, I agreed, but insisted on having some documentation in place to keep things legal, just in case she wanted out of the deal later on. Despite her agreement, she wasn't thrilled with this condition. It's worth noting that during this time, we continued to have intimate encounters as often as possible. Having co-driven for about 9 months, our relationship had spanned approximately 15 months. I genuinely cared for her, and I believe she felt the same. In times of illness, we ensured that the loads were delivered on time and took care of each other's well-being. As mentioned, our acquaintance spanned 15 months, and during the inaugural journey in our new truck, the Landship 2, we shared a moment of intimacy that was nothing short of glorious. One night, while navigating our way to California, she inadvertently confessed her love for me. The words slipped out as she drifted into sleep. This revelation prompted me to reflect on whether my feelings were reciprocated or if our connection was merely a byproduct of our business arrangement. Upon reaching our designated stop, where we were to remain for about 3 days before the next load, I secured a room at a nearby motel. Additionally, I rented a car to facilitate our exploration of the surrounding area. On our first day of exploration, we acted like love-struck teenagers, breaking in the back seat of the rental car. For the second day of our layover, we mostly lounged around the motel pool, enjoying the sight of vacationing kids playing in the water. While we relaxed, Victoria leaned over and asked my thoughts about those children. I expressed my desire to be a father someday, but emphasized the importance of waiting until I was certain that the woman I eventually married could handle the life of a trucker's wife. Despite my love for my job, Victoria's response was unexpected. Out of the blue, she found a way to topple me out of the chair I was sitting in, dumping me into the pool with one swift move, then stormed off to the room. Confused and bewildered, I wondered what had triggered her reaction, and what my next steps should be. It dawned on me that, just 2 nights ago, as she drifted off to sleep, I had heard her say she loved me. Realizing the depth of my feelings for her, I understood that she had become everything to me over the past 17 months, I acknowledged that I hadn't been intimate with anyone else since meeting her in North Dakota, even during the time she was in driving school. Deciding on my next move, I got up, went to the motel room, cleaned up, and headed out in the car without informing Victoria of my plans. I left her in the dark about my intentions, leading her to believe I had abandoned her. After 2 hours of searching, I found what I was looking for. When I returned to the room, I discovered her lying in bed, asleep with signs that she had been crying. After ensuring she was sound asleep, I quietly slipped into the flower shop next to the motel. I purchased 6 dozen roses in shades of red, yellow, orange, and purple, despite the considerable cost. Purple roses, in particular, were pricey, but I believed the gesture would be worthwhile in the long run. Returning to the room, I meticulously plucked the petals from all but the purple roses, creating a stunning display by scattering them throughout the room. I left the purple roses in a vase and attached a note to them. The note simply read, "To Victoria, I know I am dense, but it has occurred to me that we are in love. So that being said, I love you." As I settled down in the front half of the room I had rented, I heard her waking up. A loud gasp escaped her as she took in the scene around her. Approaching the purple roses, I could hear her starting to cry deeply. Quietly stepping around the corner, she caught sight of me and reacted so swiftly that I didn't have a chance to respond. We tumbled onto the bed together. I was aware of her passionate side, but this hidden intensity was a revelation. We spent 6 hours in bed. And no, we didn't sleep. Eventually, exhaustion overcame us, and we passed out. As we woke up, knowing we had to prepare for the journey ahead, she was still brimming with energy. So we indulged in another intimate moment. The sentiment captured by Jackie Gleason's words rang true. How sweet it is. I needed to strategize to ensure that we would be in Oklahoma City in 3 weeks for Victoria's upcoming birthday. I wanted to make sure she would be home with her parents during that time. Along with other surprises in mind, I took the opportunity during the 2 hours I was away from the room to call her parents. I shared some details about our current relationship with them, ensuring that her family would be present at her house for the surprise birthday party I had planned. Upon our arrival, we detached the trailer and drove over to her parents' house in the landship too. Even though we were entering a gated community, the truck undeniably drew attention. The sight of a big rig in this type of environment was likely unusual, and I had no idea how many others had witnessed such an occurrence before. Regardless, we chose to arrive in the truck. When we reached her parents' house around 10 o'clock in the morning, her entire family was already there. Since almost a year had passed since we last spent quality time with her family, I wasn't sure how everything would unfold. I could only hope that it would go according to plan. The surprise birthday party unfolded smoothly, filled with joy and high spirits. Since her dad and I had already discussed my plans, he was aware of what was about to happen. Around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he gathered everyone's attention to wish his daughter a happy birthday, and a toast ensued. Once the excitement settled, I approached Victoria, knelt down, and proposed to her. "Victoria, we've been friends for almost 2 years now. Over the past year, we've covered a lot of territory and also become lovers," I stated, and she blushed. "Since we're already 50-50 partners on Landship 2, would you be my life partner and marry me?" Overwhelmed with joy, she literally knocked me down, showering me with kisses. Finally, she looked at me with tear-stained eyes and said, "Yes." While her mom and dad had already given me their blessings, she sought their approval. Her dad, with a good sense of humor, teased her about being a trucker's wife and how he would support them. Despite the playful banter, I knew the outcome and smirked. After all was said and done, he escorted her over to me, emphasizing that I should take care of his little girl. He already knew I would. After the proposal, we left with the promise to return when her mom had everything ready for the wedding. We maintained daily communication with them, ensuring to stay in touch even when out of cell phone coverage areas. During these moments, we made stops at truck stops, fueling up, grabbing meals, and of course, calling her parents. Recognizing that my parents would want to be present, we ensured they could come when the time came. Even if it meant covering the costs of their trip, we were committed to having them there. Given my dad's role as a farmer, there wasn't much disposable income for unnecessary expenses. Their occasional trips to town for supplies or a night out were the extent of their indulgences. Fortunately, Victoria and I had visited them, allowing them to get acquainted with her, and they genuinely liked her. I initiated a conversation with Victoria's dad about a prenuptial agreement, expressing that it was my suggestion. I wanted to assure them that my intentions were not driven by a desire for any of their assets, particularly their money. It was initially surprising to both him and Victoria's mom that I was the one proposing such an agreement. However, when we had a chance to discuss it thoroughly, it eased his concerns. The next time we met her parents, I willingly signed the prenuptial agreement, confident in my belief that it was the right thing to do. My heart was certain that every decision I was making aligned with my genuine love for Victoria, and I trusted that her feelings mirrored my own. We exchanged vows in the expansive church where Victoria grew up, officiated by the pastor who had been a part of Victoria's life since childhood. The ceremony was attended by around 200 of her family members, and to my surprise, over 100 members of my own family were present. Victoria's mom and my mom collaborated to ensure as many family members as possible could attend. Remarkably, it was Victoria's dad who covered all the expenses for my financially struggling family to be there, even arranging accommodation at a motel 6 miles from his home, which he rented entirely for this special occasion. The hotel's ballroom served as the venue for our reception. I was astonished by his generosity, aware of the hard work he and his wife had put into earning their money. Later, I learned that the entire affair cost over $150,000. He explained that he wanted Victoria's wedding to be a once-in-a-lifetime event and was willing to spare no expense for it. I expressed my gratitude, sharing that I, too, hoped Victoria's marriage would be a one-time affair, and I was committed to doing right by her. Time has flown by in a whirlwind of joy, and Victoria and I are now celebrating our 49th wedding anniversary. Over the years, we've expanded our fleet to 15 trucks, each under 5 years old. Branded with the familiar name Landship, each truck is distinguished by its unique fleet number, ensuring no repetition even when we trade them in. Our family has grown to include 7 children and 2 grandchildren. Our drivers, more like an extended family, play an integral role in our success. The latest addition to our fleet, proudly designated as Landship 34, is a testament to our enduring commitment to excellence. Victoria and I have transitioned into semi-retirement, entrusting the business operations to our eldest daughter. She embodies Victoria's beauty, my sense of responsibility, and has crafted her own mini-rig, reflecting her personality and passion for the open road. While her truck may be built on a Chevy frame, it exudes the spirit of a miniature Landship too. Life becomes truly remarkable when 2 individuals, both hailing from humble beginnings on a farm, can join forces to realize their shared dream. Victoria and I have experienced the thrill of traversing 49 states, exploring much of Canada, and venturing into parts of Mexico. As we reflect on our incredible journey, the only lingering question is, what's next? With a desire for new adventures, we're contemplating a 6-month excursion to drive around the scenic islands of Hawaii, completing our exploration of all 50 states. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.